Talk of the tape, bubble trouble, and whether the once soaring semis are now in danger of an even bigger pullback. Let's ask star chip analyst Stacy Rasgon of Bernstein. He does join us now. It's good to have you back. It is stunning to watch what's taking place today in this market. Stacy, Nvidia, a $100 intraday move, almost 10%. What do you make of it?
Look, so I was joking earlier that like maybe some of these just flew a little too close to the sun for a bit. I mean, like semis have still had a monster year. They're up 20% year to date. They're up 70%, something like that, year over year. Nvidia itself is up 80% year to date still. So like, I don't worry too much. Some of this is probably kicked off. You know, we had Marvell and Broadcom report last night, and actually their AI revenues were quite strong, but the core businesses were not so good for either of them. You know, enterprise spending and the like, carrier spending are not great. And so I think that kind of weighs on it. And then people, I think, we're just looking at Nvidia in particular getting awfully close to that sort of magical, you know, four-figure $1,000 kind of number. And maybe there's a little bit of profit taking and it kind of sets everything else down. But like, I'll be honest, like this, on a noisy day like this, I don't read too much into it. Like I said, the space has still had a monster year. And I still think some of the markets, especially the AI-related markets, still have legs to them. I think those still have room. Now we can talk about some of the other markets.
Well, I do want to do that. I do want to do that in a moment. But when you say something like the core businesses of these companies, you know, for the ones that reported not so good, this market has ignored, in many respects, the core businesses of many of these companies, and they've gotten this AI halo from Nvidia. Did we overdo it in giving too much of a bump relative to AI when it's not that big a part of business for many of these other chip players?
Yes, possibly. Like in my coverage, there are two names that actually have meaningful AI revenues. That's more than just a story. That's actually contributing meaningfully to their numbers. It's Nvidia and Broadcom, and not a whole lot of others, right? Again, you can even look at an AMD, and AMD is doing really well, but as a percentage of the revenue, it's not that big, and it has not been enough to offset weakness. You know, the stock's been great, like, don't get me wrong, but they're like AMD's missed numbers like every quarter for the last year. You got names like Marvell last night where, again, like their forward guidance was very weak. You know, AI was not enough to make up the difference. Broadcom was kind of the opposite. I mean, Broadcom took maybe $2.5 billion of incremental headwind like out of their core business versus last quarter. But they had, like, their AI business was stronger by exactly the same amount. It was actually enough to bridge the gap and offset it. And because of that, like our Broadcom numbers last night went up, not down on the back of all this. So there are some names that I think are actually benefiting very well. But yeah, there are others where it is more of a story or a narrative, and we have yet to see it really influencing the numbers to a great degree.
You make the point very well here for something like an AMD. A miss, a miss, a miss, a miss. And the stock and up and up and up and up. I mean, it's up 113% since November 1st. What kind of re-rating is needed in some of these names if you suggest that, you know, the fundamentals that these companies have been so rewarded on are good, obviously, but come on. I mean, we've been giving insane gains to these names.
Yeah, it's funny, the ones that are succeeding, the valuations are not crazy. I mean, again, I've made this point a number of times, like with you, but like Nvidia, if they can actually deliver what people are thinking they can, like the stock is not expensive, right? It's actually much cheaper than it was before this all started. Even Broadcom, who reported last night, I mean, Broadcom is more expensive versus its own history, but it's trading right now in maybe the mid 20s. I mean, the entire SOX index is in the low 30s, right? You got some of these other names, though, where, like I said, the AI piece or whatever they have has not been enough to offset. And I throw a lot of the analogs into those names. They've just been cutting numbers like crazy. The stocks just really haven't gone down. And like the multiples are very, very high for like a lot of the folks in the space right now. And at some point, you know, we do need fundamentals to start to pick up. This is what's been going on, by the way. Like people have been buying the cuts broadly in the space, which is a normal thing to do in semis. You tend to want to buy them when there's blood in the streets. But usually the stocks go down before you buy them. And in this case, like the numbers have been cut and the stocks, maybe they didn't rip in some of these, but they didn't really go down either. And yet people have been buying those cuts anyways. And so it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Hopefully as we get, you know, maybe into the second half or into next year, numbers do start to pick up. Do the stocks actually go up as the estimates start to go up? Do the multiples just start to come down? Like, I don't know yet, but the typical practice would be that the multiples come down.
Alright, this is the part of the show where I break down the stocks that were mentioned in the CNBC clip. Today we're going to be taking a look at AMD, Marvell, Broadcom, Intel, Nvidia, and the SMH ETF. So we'll start with AMD. You can see they've taken their old all-time high, made it a nice support, and have bounced off, so that's pretty bullish. As far as this huge rejection day, a negative 1.9 day doesn't look big, but it must have gapped up. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, so it gapped up just like Nvidia. It gapped up almost 8 or 7.5% just to sell off all the way almost 3%. So that is a massive rejection, guys. If we look at it on the 20-day, you could argue this is a kind of resistance, this level right here, 210, and then we broke under it, came back, and are rejecting it. So we could go lower. We could, if we break 200, I'd be looking back at the 200-day moving average, which is, let's see, or actually I'd be looking for the 21-day moving average on the 1-day chart, which would some also coincide with about 185 for AMD, guys. Marvell is not looking so good. They're definitely not back to all-time highs yet. They've had a major rejection. Oh my gosh, 11.4%. Let's take a look at this. I think obviously they're headed back to 73. It looks to be a pretty massive and major resistance and support level. They're obviously on the way back, but just look at this. Somebody was just soaring on their way from 85, just bought it, and in 2 days, they're down 12%. Probably going to be 13 to 15% here soon. And look, it's coming back to that 21-day. If it can't hold that, guys, the 200-day is still here. These stocks will remain bullish even with an insane downturn. They've been so bullish that they have so much room to go. It's going to take a lot more than just one big day to counteract these uptrends. Broadcom is next. Look at this beauty. This has been very consistent, very nice. Now this looks a little more worrisome short term. You can see this kind of looks double, triple, quadruple topish. This has been rejected past the lows here also. So if this doesn't hold what looks like to be this support turn, or this resistance turn support around 1290, then we could be going to 1200, we could be going to 1150, and worst case scenario, we have a massive support zone around 950. I don't think people are going to let these stocks fall that hard or anywhere near. I think these days are going to be bought up. On Monday, people are going to can't wait to throw their money at them. Intel has just been an abomination, guys. This is a horrible looking chart. Unless you bought the very bottom or anywhere within the last couple years, this is not a stock that I want to be in. This does not attract me. It does look bullish now that we've got some AI chips being made, this and that, but look at this huge rejection. Honestly, it gapped down, made a huge gap in the chart. Then honestly, all of this just looks like enough to get some momentum to close the gap. Huge rejection, and now I wouldn't be surprised if we break 42. And once we do, guys, if we don't hold this 200-day, look out below. This is not as bullish as Nvidia and Broadcom and AMD, not even close. Let's take a look at Nvidia real quick. The rocket ship, the giant, the massive rejection. It takes the staircase up and the elevator down. We still are, even with this almost 6% rejection, we're still almost 10% above the 21-day moving average, guys, and 42% above the 200-day. So these stocks can fall an unbelievable amount and still remain bullish, still get some support somewhere. Look, it can come all the way back here and get support and continue going higher, which is just unbelievable, which would probably never ever happen, but it could. The SMH holds all of these stocks. You can see, because of Nvidia, AMD, Broadcom, way past all-time highs. We've got a nice cup and handle pattern, blew past it. Once it broke out, it's not looked back. It's hugging that 21-day as a support. It's touched. Once it broke through, it came touched, bounced, 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 bounced. And now we've gotten, let's see, before the pullback, let's see how far we were away. We were 10% away from the 21-day moving average on an ETF, guys. Now we're only, I would guess, 2 to 3%. Okay, we're still 5%, so we can still have maybe another week of selling off, and this is still bullish. It's just got so far ahead of itself, it needed a little breather. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something. If you do, make sure and hit that subscribe button, and if you know somebody that likes these type of videos, share it for me so I can grow the channel. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.